Hi, this is Rabbi Tzvi Mandel of Congregation Calvin Israel, community of Jewish friends. And how do we have to always be happy with who we are and not try to be somebody else? Because nobody's extra and nobody's unimportant in our Father's eyes, who created us, the Eibishter, who loves us so much, every single one of us. Bashar Husham, who we are. Don't change. Be who you are, because there's plenty you can do for Hashem just the way you are. The Heilig Rameir Primishlana, a village person that lived in the village, and a lot of times they were looked down upon. Came to Rameir Primishlana and he said to him, Rebbe, I don't want to live anymore in the village. I want to live in this city like a mensch, like a human being, and get a decent job and feel like a mensch and be a yid between yidden and a human being between human beings. The Heilig said, stop. Wrong. This is how you created. Hashem needs you just the way you are. Don't be somebody else. And there's plenty you could do. What do you work at? I have an inn, and people come in, and I serve them. He says, such a beautiful thing. People are traveling, and they come into your inn. They've been traveling for hours or days or weeks in those days. And maybe they need a bed to lie down in. They need a hot tea. They need a decent meal. You give them, Jewish people, you give them a kosher meal. You give them a place to daven. And someone needs a shot of whiskey. He was traveling so long. He was so cold. Those days, it was like a regular thing for a person to drink. Don't change yourself. Don't change yourself. And he mentioned that his son now runs the place. He tries to put more time into learning. He says, yeah, your son's running it, but he's not so nice to the people like you are when you're there. He's not so sensitive to them. And especially to a Jewish person that comes in. He's worried about the money coming in. I know what's going on there, he says. Tell your son he could go back to what he was doing before. He was better at that. That's what he's supposed to be. You, according to your Shorish Neshama, according to who you are, you should be doing that, because that's who you're born. And you'll come up there, you'll see how proud Hashem was of you for 120 years. Don't try to be somebody else. Try to be who Hashem made you to be, and you have a big job. And you'll accomplish it, and you'll love it. And if you don't love it, then you'll learn to love it. And you'll do your purpose in this world, and you won't have to come back again through everything that you've gone through in this world. We will continue now with the laws of Purim. So proud, we have one more chapter to go. It only has 10 paragraphs, and after that, we also have to finish the Megillah, which I think we're up to the 3rd or the 5th chapter. So tomorrow night we'll continue with that, with all the commentaries, and then we'll go back to some more things on Purim. Thank God it's not even Rosh Chodesh, and we almost finished all the laws. Tonight we'll finish all the laws. Wow. Baruch Hashem. Chapter 142, 7 Kufman Beis. The laws of Shalach Manis, or it's called Mishloach Manis to be exact, Matanis Lev Yoinim and the Purim meal. Mishloach Manis is the 2 gifts that we give to a friend. Matanis Lev Yoinim, the presents for the very poor people. That's the literal translation. And Yoinim, the literal translation of an Evyon is Ta'ev l'chol davar. He wants everything. He longs for everything. And you have plenty of those people today. That's a quote from a great rabbi that I once asked about this halacha. He says, Santa should do plenty, people. You don't have to worry about that today. And Evyon do plenty. Everybody wants everything else and the other thing also. Okay, it's a little sarcastic, but there's plenty of truth to it. And the third thing is the Purim meal. We'll go through the halachas. Okay, 1 and 2, paragraph 1 and 2 will speak about Mishloach Manis. 3 will speak about Matanis Lev Yoinim. 4 will speak about the obligation of women on this holiday. 5 will speak about rejoicing on Purim and the Purim meal. 6, becoming intoxicated. 7, a mourner, God forbid. 8, work on Purim. 9, Shulchan Purim and weddings. 10, 14th and 15th of Adar. Okay, the introduction. In this paragraph, Kitzer discusses the 3 additional mitzvos that are unique to Purim Day. They are Mishleach Manas. Literally, that means sending portions. Matanas Lavyonim. Literally, that means gifts to the poor. And eating the Purim meal. These mitzvahs may require specific intent for one to fulfill his obligation, as Mishnah Berurah says in 694:5-4. That means that mitzvah is kavana, that before you do any mitzvah, you have to think for a second, I am doing this for Hashem and Hashem only. Hashem Kal Yisrael, in the name of all the Yidden, and I want to do it with joy, and this is actually the purpose why I'm here in this world. If there's nothing else that I ever did or I'm ever going to do, just this mitzvah, this is the most important thing. So I'm doing this for Hashem's sake because Hashem commanded me to do this. Okay. Paragraph 1. Every person is obligated to send at least 2 gifts of food to one person. Okay, Mishnah Berurah 695:18 cites a question as to whether the term mishloach manis and sending in the verse cited later in this seif, in this paragraph, indicates that one who does not send the portions through an agent but brings them himself fulfills his obligation. Now, there's a whole to-do in the Paiskim, into the halacha deciders, and it goes back and forth. Does it have to be done through a messenger? There's reasons for this. I'm not going to go into it. But the basic of it is that when 2 people want to show love for each other or care for each other, so some say the best thing is you bring it personally and give it to the person, and you look them in the face, and that's part of the love and the appreciation that the mitzvah brings. Others say, bring in a third Jew, so that another Jew is involved in this special message and carries it to the person, and then usually what happens is the other person sends back another thing, so that enhances the specialness of it. Okay, so that's one thing. At least 2 gifts, we said, to one person, or drink, as we'll see in the next paragraph. One may also send one type of food and a drink. However, one does not fulfill his obligation by sending clothing or other goods. This is in Mishnah Berurah 694:20. Specifically, the sages wanted us to do it this way. Okay, we will go further. As it is stated in Esther 9:22, to observe annually the 14th day of the month of Adar as days of feasting and gladness, and sending portions, each person to his friend, etc. This wording implies that one must send 2 gifts to one person. Okay. Whoever gives an increased amount of mishloach manas to friends is praiseworthy. Nevertheless, it is better to increase the amount that one gives for matanas lavyonim to the poor, gifts for the poor, as we'll see in paragraph 3, than to increase one's spending on a lavish meal and on sending portions to his friends. Why? For there is no greater and more glorified joy before the Holy One, blessed be He, our Father that loves us so much, than to gladden the hearts of the poor, the orphans, and the widows. In other words, Hashem considers the joy of giving to the poor a greater form of fulfilling the mitzvah of Purim joy than that of holding grand feasts or giving many mishloach manas. Furthermore, one who gladdens the hearts of these unfortunate individuals acts just like the Shekhinah acts, Hashem himself acts. As it is stated in Yeshaya 57, I, Hashem, am with the despondent and lowly of spirit, to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the despondent. Paragraph 2. An item is not considered portions, manes, shlech manes, with regard to fulfilling one's obligation of mishalach manes, unless it is an item that can be eaten as is without further preparation, such as cooked meat or fish, but not raw meat or fish. Or one may fulfill his requirement with types of sweets or fruit, or a cup of wine or med, or the like. One who sends a portion to a wealthy individual should preferably send something that would not be considered insignificant to that person. That's Bir Halacha in 695. 2, starting verse Chayiv. Okay, that's an interesting halacha. That is here. Also, a great man said that perhaps if you're sending it to someone that has a lot of people sending him shalach manas, like a rabbi in a community or a doctor or a person of the public, so it would be good to send canned foods of stuff. Should be ready to eat, but canned vegetables or whatever, so that if he has so much, he could store it for another time rather than just throw it in the garbage because so many people sent him the same thing. Number 3, paragraph 3. Kitzer now discusses the mitzvah of matanas lavyanim, which is gifts to the poor on Purim. Every person, even the poorest of Jews, who himself receives charity, is obligated to give at least 2 gifts to 2 poor people. Okay, initially, the gift should be something that the poor person can directly benefit from on Purim. In other words, either food or money that he could spend that day. One who is so poor that he himself requires charity to live may give 2 gifts to 2 other poor people, and they can then give those gifts back to him in turn. See Mishnah Berurah 694 2. See also Bir Halacha 694. Okay. That is, he must give 1 gift to each person. 2 gifts to 2 people, mean 1 to each. Okay. That's in Esther 9, verse 22, sending portions each person to his friend and gifts to the poor. This wording indicates that one must give 2 gifts to 2 poor people. Didn't he just say? Oh, 2 gifts to 2 poor people. Okay, good. Both gifts and to the poor, plural, indicate a minimum of 2 gifts to 2 recipients. It's 2 to 2. Okay. We do not investigate the legitimacy of the need when distributing charity monies on Purim. Rather, whoever extends his hand out to take charity, we give him. One who is in a place where there are no poor people should separate and hold on to the amount of money that he usually gives until he encounters poor people or he can send it to them. Nowadays, many rabbis and charitable institutions collect money that is earmarked for matanas lavyanim on the day of Purim, as well as on days before Purim, as well as the day of Purim itself, and they then distribute the money to the poor on Purim. Many great people spend the whole day with this great mitzvah. Paragraph 4. Women are also obligated to perform the mitzvahs of Mishalach Manis and Matanas Lavyanim. With regards to Mishalach Manis, a woman should send only to another woman, and a man should send only to another man. Since it was customary for a man to send gifts to his bride after the Kedushin, the procedure that causes a woman to be considered a married woman, there was a concern that a man may send gifts to a widow, and people will think that these are the gifts that follow Kedushin. That's the Ramah in 695.4 and Mishnah Berurah there. However, with regards to matanas lavyanim, money for the poor, a woman may also send to a man, and vice versa. since this is usually in the form of kish and not other gifts, we are not concerned that it will be confused with bridal gifts. In fact, even if he sends food to the poor, since it is done in the manner of charity, there is no room for the above concern. That's Mishnah Berurah 695:27. Okay. Some women rely on their husbands, assuming that they send Mishalach Manis and Matan Savyanim on their behalf. However, this practice is incorrect. Rather, it is proper for them to be stringent and send Mishalach Manis and Matan Savyanim on their own. I think we'll stop here meanwhile. We have very little more to go, but we'll stop here and we'll see what the Rav Shulchan Aruch says, if there is any comment from the Rav Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll see Shar Mizyon Balacha. Rav Shulchan Aruch, 142 in the Mishnah Berurah, in the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch, 142. But he doesn't add anything. Let's see the Shar Mizyon Balacha of Braun in 142. Okay, the Binyan Sinyan, the response of Binyan Sinyan in chapter 44 questions if one should bring the Shalach Manas himself or send it through a messenger, as we mentioned before, because it says, Mishloyach Manas means to send, it would seem through a shlichus, through a shliach. And that's the question, is that how it should be done, or should it be done personally? And the Eshel Avram B'Chacha in Tafresh Sei Tzadik Hey writes that if one does it himself, it's also okay. And we know that there's a general rule that mitzvah b'yosem b'shluchai, it's better to do a mitzvah yourself than to send someone instead of you. And Rashi says in Kedushin, beginning of the second chapter, that one who does a mitzvah himself rather than sending it through a shliach, through a messenger, gets more reward from heaven. Also in Chassidus it speaks about being more a tikkun for the soul that came into this world when one does it itself. However, others say that anyway it's better through a shliach because of the way we derive it from the verse. In the response to the Tshuva Sefer Shalis Shloima, the second volume, Simon Pei Beis, he says, that it's definitely okay if you do it yourself also, because we find all over that doing something yourself is better and more of a tercha, more of a bother, and we show more love for Hashem and fear of Hashem by doing the mitzvah ourselves. Wanted to do it through a messenger, it's also good. Okay. We learned that one sends one person two presents. That's Shalach Manas. One person, two things. The Bir Halacha says, in the name of the Turi Yevon and in the name of Rabbi Akiva Eger, that if someone sends a present to a poor person, does he accomplish both mitzvahs at once, Shalach Manas and Matan Savyanim? Or do we say that he should do each one separately with two different people? And the Ksav Sofer in his response, Kuf Lametes, speaks at length about this. Now, we learned in the second paragraph that manes, presence, means something that's ready to be eaten just the way it is, without having any fixing, anything to add to it becoming edible, like fish or meat that's already cooked, not raw, or sweet things, or fruit, or wine. So the Berhetiv says, what happens if somebody sent his friend a chicken, and he ate it, the person ate it, and after that, on the day of Purim, he finds out, God forbid it shouldn't happen to anyone, that it was treif. Okay? So, poor guy, but the one who sent it, did he accomplish the mitzvah or didn't he accomplish the mitzvah? And in the Sefer Tshuva Me'ahava, he says it's simple that you don't accomplish the mitzvah because the person is disgusted from doing things that are a sin, obviously. And the Rambam says in Hilchos Trumas, Perek Zayin and Halacha Yud and Halacha Yud, and the Tosis Yontif and Trumas Perek Vav, and the Maram Shik in his responsa says that also something that either the person that received it or the person that's giving it would be permissible to eat this for whatever reason. Let's say if he's not well and he's allowed to eat it or whatever it might be. So that's also not a reason that he should have accomplished the mitzvah and he has to do the mitzvah over again. Interesting, Shiloh. Okay. The Masham, the B'chacha, writes that a person cannot accomplish the mitzvah of Shalach Manis with money, even though Taisus, one of the foremost commentaries in Tractate Megillah Eid, writes that he could buy something with the money, but it's not better than raw food, he says, and with raw food, we just said that it's not good, so money is also not good, because you can't eat it right away. And that's the mitzvah. Okay, next. Shalach Manis Matan Savyonim, these two mitzvahs to Magen Avraham brings down from the Baal HaMaor that you should not give poor people money for Purim before Purim, because they might use it up before Purim. However, if you sent it before Purim and it comes to them on the day of Purim, then it's okay. The Sefer Yad Aaron says if somebody sent Shalach Manis to someone and it was stolen or it got lost on the way and didn't come to him, sadly enough, he didn't accomplish the mitzvah because everything goes according to the person that should have received the Shalach Manis. And Eshel Avram, from the Gra Oppenheimer, not the regular Eshel Avram, he says that if one person who celebrates Purim on the 14th sent to a person that celebrates on the 15th. As we learned, there's two different kinds of Purims. So since the person who received it on the day of Purim, his Purim, it's good enough. Same thing, Maria Assad writes the same thing. And there are two different views. Either way, the Beis Sha'arim and the Levushim Madcha speak about it as well. Interesting, Shaila Machna Chaim, he was a student of the Chassam Sofer in the third volume, speaks about what if a person sent something to another person and he was a katan, he was a minor at the time. And on Purim he was already bar mitzvah. By Purim he was bar mitzvah already. Do you go according to the one who sent it or the one that received it? And he goes back and forth. He doesn't give a halachic practical answer. Can one do the mitzvah of matanis of yoinim, a present to the poor, by forgiving him for some money that he owes you? And the Churis Chai says no. Just like someone who would like to marry a woman by forgiving up the money that she owes him, and the halachas, it's not good. Okay. Yeah. Have a great night. We'll see you, Mitzvah Shem.